guys, how's it going? It's Al. We're here to talk about some NFL Week 1. I'm going to focus on wide receivers for this video. We're going to go through the DraftKings pricing from the top to the bottom. I'm going to try and hit on as many guys as we can in this short video. These videos are usually 15 to 20 minutes, and I appreciate you guys kind of tuning in every single time that I put out one of these videos. For you returning subs, I appreciate you guys coming back. Welcome back to NFL season. For anybody who's new and found this on their front page or through their suggested videos, thank you for being here. Drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I'd love to see you again. Be sure you ring that notifications bell. I come out with a ton of NFL content throughout the season, whether it's DraftKings centric, FanDuel centric, sports betting centric, or whatever else. And all of these videos are recorded live on twitch.tv/Al_smizzle. There's a link down below in the description if you want to join the conversation over there during football season. I will be live 6 days a week for a few hours a day, talking about NFL, recording these videos, and everything else. Easiest way for me to get to know you is to come on over there. So all the plugs, all the mentions, all the stupid calls to action are out of the way. Now we can get to talking about these wide receivers for week 1. And DraftKings, in my opinion, did a very good job of pricing the entire slate, right? We talked about this on the running backs video, where they priced up the floor on the wide receivers, on the running backs, so that in case people are missing for COVID, we're not getting guys that are 3,000 to 3,500 that should project to get 20 to 25 touches in week 1 and just absolutely smash value and drive the slate completely into a pick'em. I think they did a good job with that, and I think that they were very aggressive about pricing the superstars, so you can't just plug 3 or 4 of them in, something we talked about on the way too early first look video. Michael Thomas at home is an absolute layup. I could do the rest of this silently because he's playing at home and against the Tampa Bay defensive backfield that has not been able to stop him or pretty much any other wide receiver for the last couple of years. I'm not sure any of that's going to change. I'm not sure that Michael Thomas's volume is going to change. I'm not sure that Drew Brees is suddenly going to get inaccurate, or Michael Thomas is going to start dropping balls that are thrown accurately towards him, or that there aren't going to be 10 to 15 balls thrown his way on week 1 against Tampa Bay. He's $9K. You're going to have to pay to go get him. Okay? If you can afford him, if running back value opens up in the sub 5,300 range, if 1 or 2 of those guys opens up, then Michael Thomas becomes a very viable cash game play for week 1. As it is, he is a tournament play for me because I don't think that I can fit him into my cash game lineup as things sit right now. And we're recording this on August the 14th on a Friday in the morning. Things can change before week 1. He is clearly the elite option at the position. But there are others. Obviously, Julio Jones, who's in the game most likely to shoot out on the slate. The chalkiest game stack that there could be is the Falcons against Seattle. Palatable guys to stack in the passing game. Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley. Let's bring up just that game to kind of talk about that for just a second, right? Let me see if I can find it here on the slate. Boom, boom. So the wide receivers here, and yes, there is also a tight end in Double H, Hayden Hurst, and he's a good value on the slate. But like Julio Jones, Tyler Lockett, Calvin Ridley, DK Metcalf, you can very easily get 2 to 3 of these guys into a game stack, use them with one of their quarterbacks. I'm fine with every one of these guys. Julio Jones, everybody's going to tell me how he never scores touchdowns or whatever. He's amazing. Averaged 19.5 points a game on DraftKings last year for a reason, which is higher than any of these other guys who were geeked to play in week 1. Tyler Lockett, as small as he is, with as many end zone targets as he gets, kind of bucks the trend of end zone targets being thrown to larger wide receivers. Taller, heavier wide receivers usually get the bulk of the end zone targets, but Tyler Lockett, a top 5 player in that category last season at 6,500 in play. Calvin Ridley, also complementary to both of the other ones at 6,100 for week 1. And DK Metcalf led the league in terms of end zone targets, the highest leverage targets for any wide receiver that there can be. Ended the year with 8 touchdowns on like 18, I think, end zone targets, not red zone targets, not targets like if the ball's on the 19 and they throw you a pass at the 16-yard line, that counts as a red zone target. That's nowhere near as valuable as your quarterback throwing you the ball inside of the end zone where all you have to do is literally catch it and you get 7 points on DraftKings plus the yardage. So leads the league in 2019 in terms of end zone targets, and with his size and athleticism and trust from his quarterback, who also has tendencies, Russ Wilson does, of throwing the ball to his outside wide receivers in the end zone, that should be somewhat sustainable moving forward for DK Metcalf. And if we can see an uptick in his catch rating, you know, he caught like half the balls that were thrown his way last year. Let's see for sure. A little more, 60%, I think, somewhere around there, 70 catches on 114 targets. If he can bump up his catch percentage, his hands can get a little bit better, he's still going to get force-fed the ball around the end zone. So a great game stack there. Also good pricing for us. They're not out of the realm of possibility to play in cash or tournaments. DeVante Adams, though, coming in at $1,700 less than Michael Thomas. Way more cash game viable. Similar amount of targets. Great quarterback throwing him the ball. Minnesota, a good defense, but it hasn't really mattered because, you know, 16 targets, 13 catches, 100-yard bonus, 26 points against Minnesota in week 16 last year. They played twice. He has torched them the last few years. I don't think that that's going to change with DeVante Adams. He is an amazing wide receiver and should see possibly the highest target percentage of any wide receiver in the league this year based on the other pass catching options that Aaron Rodgers has. So at $7,300, I don't think we're going to see him at that cheaper price. I think that he's an $8,000 to $8,300 wide receiver on DraftKings. This could be the cheapest we see him all year. Godwin and Mike Evans with Brady in a game that could shoot out. We don't know how these guys are going to do this year versus last year. Last year's numbers are somewhat out the window for me when it comes to Chris Godwin and it comes to Mike Evans, and here's why. They had a quarterback who threw 8,000 interceptions in one season, which constantly put them behind, was constantly put them in a negative game flow or negative game script, which forced them to throw a ton in the second half of every game. I'm not going to argue the narrative of whether Brady's arm is what it was before. Tom Brady is still a great quarterback. Right? I'm not going to go down that route and say that he can't do what he did. No. Tom Brady's going to be fine. And in this Arians offense, he is also going to be fine. I'm just not sure that all the targets are going to go exactly where they went last year, with Godwin last year lining up in the slot a lot when they went with one tight end. This year, they're going to go with a lot more two tight end sets from what we hear. We don't have preseason to really count the first team snaps and how many times they were in 12 versus, 13. It's like, we'll see, 12 versus 11, but we'll see what type of formations they have. I'm expecting Godwin to be more on the outside this year. Not that that's going to affect him. He's a great wide receiver. I'm just not sure that we're going to see the ridiculous amounts of downfield throws from Brady that we saw from Jameis Winston. Winston, way more of a gunslinger. Brady, way more efficient. So they're not going to get the amount of targets, the sheer number of targets, in my opinion, in 2020 that they saw in 2019. So that's my trepidation with the price points that they're at. The same goes for DeAndre Hopkins. We're not going to see a 172 target season from DeAndre Hopkins. So he's still kind of priced as the guy that he was before. He's an amazing wide receiver, tremendously talented, can definitely be a 2-touchdown guy, but I'm not thinking that we're going to see a lot of these 14 target games, these double-digit target games. I'm thinking we're going to see a lot more of these 8 target games in 2020 versus what we've seen from him when he was on Houston. Adam Thielen could also lead the league. As I mentioned with DeVante Adams, same thing with Thielen, could lead the league in terms of overall targets or target market share. He was dinged up last year, but 7 touchdowns on 42 catches is tremendous. Has the trust of his quarterback and his OCs. I don't really need to say much more. Adam Thielen, 6,700, I believe, is in play. DJ Moore, new system there, but facing off against Las Vegas, who is bad. New quarterback, better quarterback play expected this year than last, based on Cam Newton's injury and who was filling in for him. DJ Moore is an absolute stud. He gets easily catchable balls. He works underneath to mid-range a lot. That's where Teddy Bridgewater kind of thrives. We did not see Michael Thomas take a down tick in the games where Bridgewater started versus the games where Drew Brees started. DJ Moore, I'm not saying that he is Michael Thomas talent-wise, but he operates in the same areas of the field that Michael Thomas wins. So you have a quarterback who could feed a guy in those areas and another player in DJ Moore who wins and operates in those same areas. I think that DJ Moore could have a tremendous year, and at 6,600, certainly in play for week 1. Already talked about Lockett. Stefon Diggs is going to be boom or bust all year with Josh Allen, who throws downfield more than most quarterbacks in the NFL, but throws 10 yards more downfield than maybe he should on many throws. So if his accuracy on those deep balls can improve, Stefon Diggs' efficiency on catching deep balls and contested balls is top-notch, one of the best in the league, if not the best in the league in both of those categories. So if Josh Allen is on target one day, Stefon Diggs will catch two touchdown passes on that day, probably that are of the deep variety, but there will be other days where he is missed. You say, man, I would have won that GPP if only Josh Allen hadn't overthrown Steph Diggs, who was 10 yards behind the cornerback by 5 yards. He had him wide open and he missed him. You will hear one of your friends tell you that bad beat story at some point in 2020, and it might be you who tells it and it might be me who tells it, but it's definitely happening. So Steph Diggs to me is not yet in cash game consideration, but is certainly a GPP play, and not everybody is a GPP play, but Steph Diggs certainly is. Galladay against Chicago, I'm probably going to wait. I do like the volume that he gets. Same with MJ Jr., but I'm not going to buy into this Lions offense against that Chicago defense just yet. If you're buying the Cincinnati offense with the new coach, the new coordinators, the new system with Burrow, and everything that they have going on there are definitely pieces around Burrow in that offense, with AJ Green, with Tyler Boyd, with Joe Mixon. And Tyler Boyd is better when AJ Green's on the field. So AJ Green being back and healthy is a big boon to Tyler Boyd. If you're looking for a mid-range wide receiver to target here, a lot of good things going on in Cincinnati right now for football, which is a weird thing to say, but it is true. And if Burrow can accelerate quickly out of the gate with the truncated offseason, without the mini camps, without 3 preseason games for him to get live action snaps against first team defenses, if he can hit the ground running, and a lot of people predict that offenses are going to be ahead of the curve versus defenses, at least early in the season. We'll see if that's going to be true. Helmus, thank you for the 3 years of support. Do you know what today is? It's our anniversary. Look at there. 3 years. Thank you very much, man. Let's get some VIP spam in the chat for Helmus and his 3 years here on Twitch. Julian Edelman. It's going to depend whether you are buying on Cam Newton or whether you're not buying on Cam Newton is going to determine your level of buying Julian Edelman or N'Keal Harry in this Patriots offense. I still don't think that Miami's defense is going to be good. I have them currently as one of the 5 or 6 worst defensive units in the league based on personnel. We'll see if they change their scheme. We'll see if that changes how they kind of do things, right? And maybe they'll be more efficient defensively than they were last year when they were the team or one of the teams that we targeted week in, week out. It is entirely possible that they're an improved defense in 2020 versus what they were in 2019 and still be somebody that we're going to target in 2020. I think that it's not everything is not binary. And in the replies sometimes on YouTube or on Twitter, I get things like, they're going to be much better than they were last year. Okay, but when you were like 32nd, 26 is much better, but it still sucks. I think the Patriots are going to be able to put up points. If you want the high floor, low ceiling play, go with Julian Edelman. If you want the higher or the lower floor, high ceiling play, N'Keal Harry is the play, and both of those depend on whether or not you're buying Cam Newton. DeVante Parker, one of the only options on Miami to be thrown the ball with the players that have opted out for the Dolphins in their pass catching core. Let's bring up the Dolphins here for just a second. Yes, New England's a good defense. No, I don't think they're going to be as efficient as they were last year. So let's look at their flex. So Howard, Breida, Williams still recovering for injury, may not be ready for week 1. They essentially have DeVante Parker to catch passes in week 1, Mike Gesicki, and we saw what he could do at tight end at 4,500. I think that he is a viable value play for week 1 with the amount of targets that he saw down the stretch last year, 6+ pretty much every game, and now not fighting anybody else for targets, right? And may line up more in the slot than he did before. And at 3,900, you have Jakeem Grant, Isaiah Ford at 3,600. You're going to have, these are tournament punt plays only. If they're going to see the field at 60, 70, 80% of the snaps in week 1 in a game where they must throw the ball, and in my opinion, right now they're saying it's an open competition. But if Fitzmagic is the starter in week 1, I like it a lot more for these pass catchers than if Tags is the starter in week 1. Because we know what Fitz can do. Is he a great quarterback? No. But for fantasy and what he can do for wide receivers and take chances, especially in positive game flow situations for us in fantasy, where we're going to throw the ball a ton, we want Fitz to throw the ball a ton. Because looking at those games that he had last year, 1 touchdown, 4 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, multiple touchdowns in many games last year, the possibility is there for Fitz and the heavily depleted pass catching core for Miami to actually kind of do some things in week 1 at their salary and at their price points. Talked about Metcalf, love Landry's floor as well. Getting down into this kind of value range, I'll talk about a couple of the guys that I like. Marquise Brown, I think, is going to have an elevated floor this year from where he was last year. But I don't know if that's going to be the case in week 1 with them projected to play from ahead as much as they're going to be projected to play from ahead in week 1. But they played from ahead in week 1 last year, and he had 2 touchdowns on 5 targets, 4 catches for 147 yards. So if Marquise can get loose behind a defense, based on what this offense does, like 82 targets in 15 games is kind of trash. But what he does with those 82 targets is not. I expect these 82 targets to jump to maybe 100 to 110 this year. Hopefully higher, but I think 110 is reasonable. If that happens, because they should be throwing the ball more in the whole of 2020 versus what they did on the whole in 2019, based on them not playing from ahead as much in 2020 as they did in 2019. We should see more targets on a week in, week out basis for Marquise Brown, and with his playmaking ability and with his ability to get behind defenses, and he's healthier and bigger and stronger, and everybody's in the best shape of their life at this point of every season. At 5,100, the risk of a low floor isn't all that high. So Marquise Brown is, in my opinion, is going to be extremely heavily owned in week 1. And I don't think it's going to be wrong, right? I don't think it's at the point where his percentage owned is going to outweigh his salary and his somewhat low floor coming from last year, or even his increased floor from what I'm projecting for what it's going to be this year. I think he's priced exactly right for what he is right now. If Marquise Brown turns from a 2 to 4 target guy into a consistent 7-8 a week target guy, he becomes a 6,500 to 7,500 wide receiver. He's priced at 5,100 because of the risk, and because of the fact that they may not have to throw the ball a ton. In my opinion, he's a lot like DeSean Jackson for week 1 at a similar price point. DeSean Jackson, healthy, finally. They have Rigor on the other side, who I have not talked about yet, but I think is certainly in play based on his size, ability in the end zone, and the fact that he's just not going to face a lot of attention from a defense yet. DeSean Jackson, more of a complementary piece for his quarterback and all of their other pass catchers on every team that he's ever been on. When he is healthy and on the field, no wide receiver outside of Randy Moss does more for a pass catching core. So right now, with Jackson and Rigor lining up on the outside at 4,900 and 4,300, we understand what Zach Ertz is and what he does, and Dallas Goedert playing when they go to tight end, and Miles Sanders, who is, in my opinion, going to be the highest owned running back in week 1 and catches some balls himself. Very easy to go with a Carson Wentz stack with 2 of, for a tournament, Rigor or Jackson. Their price point's not restrictive at all. Low expectation. They don't really need to score you that many points. If they get you 12, you're golden. 4 catches for 70 yards almost gets you to that point. It doesn't take all that much. DeSean Jackson, if he catches 4 passes, he'll probably have over 70 yards. And Zach Ertz as well at 5,800. Not all that high. You can get yourself a 2 a double stack and possibly bring it back with somebody like Terry McLaurin at 5,600, who I think is too cheap for week one. But week one is always about, the salaries are going to be a little bit depressed in week one because they want to make it fun for you to make lineups. Terry McLaurin going to be a pretty palatable option, especially in stacks as a bring back player. A lot of people are going to roster Sanders, as I said. Everybody's expecting Philly to be playing from ahead, which means that Washington's going to be playing from behind and throwing in a positive game script for their passing game, or a negative game script, which is positive for their passing game. Terry McLaurin at 5,600. Elevated targets this year versus last year. We're going to see more from him. There's just nobody else that he's fighting for targets, no matter who the quarterback's going to be. And right now, we don't know if it's going to be Haskins. We don't know if it's going to be Alex Smith, whatever. There's supposed to be some sort of open competition. Alex Smith now cleared. McLaurin's going to be fed. And that's all it comes down to. And I think he's going to be popular as well because of who else is on this slate and how he complements those players as a bring back player for Sanders or in stacks with the Philly passing game. Couple of value plays in that 5K to 4K range. Jefferson, if you're looking to play a rookie, when you're going to play rookies in week one, the most important thing that they must be is on the field. There has to be a path to playing time. They have to play a large number of snaps. Justin Jefferson does project to play a solid number of snaps in week one for the Minnesota Vikings. He's a very talented prospect. Lines up across from somebody who's going to draw every double team, so he should see man coverage, and the ability for him to get loose is what's most attractive to me at 4,800 for Justin Jefferson. Similar to Rigor in terms of their path to playing time in week one. Yes, there are other rookie wide receivers that we can talk about. Ruggs, CeeDee Lamb should see playing time in the slot. Ruggs inside and outside for the Raiders. But in my opinion, the top two rookies for week one are going to be, should be, in terms of my ranks for salary, Jefferson and Rigor, based on where I think they're going to land on their market share of projected targets for their teams. I think CeeDee Lamb is a great player. I think that Ruggs is a great player. Ruggs should see a lot of targets. He's in that group as well in a game that could shoot out. So those three rookies are probably who I'm going to focus on. Larry Fitzgerald, not very much upside for him. Probably going to be an avoid for me. 4 catches for 40 yards is what you're going to see most weeks. If he finds his way into the end zone once or twice in those 3, 4, 5 catches, then yeah, he's going to be a tournament smash. But like with the addition of D-Hop and the maturation of his quarterback and Kirk and Drake and the possibility of Arnold as a punt play tight end that they seem to like a lot in Arizona, probably not somebody I'm going to be investing in, though I've invested in him pretty much his entire career. Now we get into the cheap plays. And to be very honest with you, 5 weeks out, I don't have very many sub 4,500 plays that I absolutely want to hang my hat on. As the season gets closer and as we get to the actual week one first look, and as we talk about this with the stream every single day, I think that we'll get into more guys that will carve themselves out for us as viable week one snap percentage, target market share type guys. A couple that we can look at. GPP flyer would be Miles Boykin. On the other side of Hollywood Brown, has big playability, really big body, massive individual, and extremely fast. Complete boomer bust here. Not going to see a ton of targets, but if 1 or 2 of them turns into a touchdown, can definitely win you a GPP. Higher floor, lower ceiling play. Jalen Hurd at 4,100. His price is 41 on DK, but 47 on FanDuel, and 4,700 on FanDuel for a wide receiver is way cheaper, respectively, than 4,100 for a wide receiver on DraftKings because of the pricing and the scoring and everything else. I like him more as a value play on FanDuel for week one, where we sit. The San Francisco wide receivers, a little bit dinged up, a little bit up in pace based on who they're playing against. Jalen Hurd, if he is the starter in the slot for San Francisco, absolutely loved him. Talked about the amount of targets that there are up for grabs for Washington, and that McLaurin's going to be the guy who gets the lion's share of them. Gandy Golden is another one who could end up as a 5-6 target guy if he is starting in week one, and we don't know if he is. So he's a wait and see for me as the preseason progresses, and we hear from their beat writers. And Chris Conley, an efficient but not sexy pick any week. Freakish athlete, 4K. Jacksonville, second year with their with Minshew, their starting quarterback, and saw a solid amount of targets for the price that he's at, and very efficient around the red zone if you want to avoid going with Chark at a higher price. Chris Conley, another value play to kind of focus on. Thank you guys for joining. I appreciate y'all being here. Drop a like on the video. Leave me a comment in the replies down below. Let me know what videos you want to see before the season gets here. And I'll catch you guys later. Bye.
He's a legend.